Will Jedd Fisch really leave Washington for UCLA? I think it's ridiculous. Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer doesn't think so. Let's dive into it on a crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into a Locked On crossover. I'm Roman Tomashoff. I'm the host with Locked On Huskies. That man right there is Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. He's the host of Locked On UCLA. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And just quick reminder to all our everydayers out there, wherever you're getting this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever that might be, click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well, so you don't miss when we post a new show on our respective channels. And we are getting together for a truly wonderful crossover for all you everydayers out there today. We're going to look ahead to UCLA versus UW later on in the year. We know the game is not for over a month, but we wanted to get together and have this conversation. So we're going to talk about that, some other things like assessing the move to the Big Ten, the positives, the negatives. We'll get there in a little bit, but the big news, the big thing is Pete Nakos over at On3 put out a report last week that Jedd Fisch is a name to watch in this UCLA coaching search. I think this is ridiculous, and there's a lot of leverage involved and different things like that. Zach, what do you think?
I mean, all I'm saying, everybody's throwing out the fact that Jedd's family is not with him in Seattle, and the fact that Jedd really wanted the UCLA job to begin with prior to potentially getting to Washington or to Arizona. Now, the Bruins had their chance a long, long time ago to get Jedd if they really wanted to. They had multiple chances. If they fired Chip Kelly, they could have had him. If they wanted Jedd before they hired Chip Kelly, they could have had him. And instead they said, yeah, that's not where we're going to go with it. And maybe there might be some regret. I'm not sure. UCLA is at a certain stage where if they wanted a cheaper Jedd Fisch, they could have had him. At this stage, he is a hot commodity. He's going to be linked to UCLA. I like the linking, but what's to make of the fact that his kids and his wife, I believe, Roman, aren't with him in Seattle? And is that a reason to believe he might leave to go to Los Angeles?
No, I really don't think so. It's something I've heard a lot over on Locked On Huskies. And to be honest, I've really just cast this off to the side because this is a guy who is a true football coach. And he has had 7, 8, 9, whatever it is, jobs in the last 15 years. So I thought this was a really great idea for his family to do so because, you know, it's easier for his kids, two of them, I believe, are still in high school, to grow up in a community that they know and they don't have to worry about moving. And when you're making $7.5 million somewhere in that ballpark, which wouldn't that be nice? It'd be absolutely fantastic that you can afford to have 2 houses and grow up in a place where you did just spend 3 years. And from all accounts, from everything I've spoken to people around the UW coaching staff about, they all just genuinely did love their time in Tucson. But, one of the big things that I think needs to really get just dissected here is I don't think that, and I know Arizona they couldn't afford Jedd Fisch and everything that came with him, because it's not just the $7.5 million he's getting paid this year, which is going to keep increasing by an increment of, I want to say, $200,000 over the length of his contract. It's the close to $8 million that Jedd Fisch has an assistant coach salary pool. It's the $123 million that Washington's Go Big Fund has raised in just its first year. And it's all these different things where that's contributed to various upgrades around the program and different things like that. And I look at the buyout number, which would be $10 million for UCLA if it were to come before the 1st of January, which I'm sure everyone would want to happen with the transfer portal and everything like that. If anything were to come to fruition, I look at just all of these other numbers and I think there's no way.
I will say that the UC Regents, on the day that we're recording this, Roman, actually have come together, which is like the all-important public figures that kind of decide how these UC schools are spending money and what's the public money going to go to. Bob Myers is a UC Regent. He's also on the coaching search committee for UCLA. Yes, that Bob Myers. You heard the name Bob Myers, Warriors and all that. And prior to this, I think reported by the LA Times, the Regents have approved the ability for UCLA to spend the money for a coach. What that number is, I don't think we really know at this moment. But the Bruins are ready to spend a pretty penny. Now, whether that's on Tim Skipper or enough to go get Jedd Fisch, they're kind of getting the go-ahead to say, we can get a lot more money into the UCLA athletics program, UCLA as a school as a whole, if we actually care about the football program. And I think they've convinced enough people, especially with the new chancellor that the Bruins have, Julio Frank, that UCLA is worth having the money to spend on a coach. So I think, as crazy as I say it, the Bruins aren't scared of that money. The real question is, Roman, is Jedd Fisch worth that money to go get him?
So I do think that Jedd Fisch is worth whatever, because in my opinion, I think a lot of this is a play from maybe some people on Jed's team, like his agent and everything, to get a raise from Washington. Because you look at the USA Today coaching database, or coaching salary database, excuse me, that got released within hours of this report, I might add, that Jedd Fisch is the 22nd highest paid coach in the nation. Do you know who's directly ahead of him on that list, Zach?
I do not recall.
Luke Fickell, who is yeah. So I look at just what Jed and his team might have thought of this and said, maybe he deserves a raise of $750K, somewhere in that ballpark.
I think much higher of Jedd Fisch than I do of Luke Fickell. Obviously, it's easy to say that now, but I mean, come on.
No, absolutely.
He turned around a pretty much winless Arizona program and got them to 10 wins out of nowhere with the quarterback that wasn't even the starter at the time with Noah Fafita. I mean, and then he takes over Washington. I think much higher, but $10 million is a steep buyout to pay.
Exactly. And that's a big part of this. And again, that's why I wanted to throw all these other numbers out there of close to $8 million in assistant coaching salary pool this year. I've spent a lot of time crunching the numbers on this because I haven't had time to record a bonus show just to talk about this. So I'm glad we got a chance to do this. Zach, Deshaun Foster's contract plus the entire assistant coach salary pool that UCLA paid out last season doesn't even equal Jedd Fisch's contract number from last year. So it's one of those things where, UCLA might be inclined to spend more money. I don't think they're inclined to spend that much. And, to go back to your original question here, we got off on a tangent. Is Jedd Fisch worth it? I think absolutely, because Jedd Fisch is a tremendous recruiter. He's done a great job turning around Washington's recruiting, which is in a really bad place when Kalen DeBoer left, because he did leave the cupboards bare following that national championship run. He had to have 42 new players on the roster last year between just freshmen and a spring transfer portal window that was absolutely barren. And then he did a much better job turning around this roster in 2025. I'm so happy with where this team is right now, sitting at 5-1. You see young stars all over the field. I look at this 2026 class headlined by a 5-star offensive tackle in Cody Green and a couple of high-end 4-stars in running back Brian Bonner and edge rusher Derek Coleman-Brusa. And I think that with everything Washington has had, when Jedd Fisch was asked about this earlier this year, when Deshaun Foster first got the boot, his answer was, people want to come to Washington. Like, this is something that's really, really important, is Washington was already somewhat of a destination. It has been one of the premier powers in the RIP Pac-12 for so long. And it was just always looking for someone like Jedd Fisch, who was able to sell it to its maximum potential and then recruit it, because Chris Peterson did a tremendous job of that. But he got tired of doing that after 3 years. And since then, Washington's been looking for someone to sell the program at a high level. And I could not be more impressed with what Jedd Fisch is doing in that regard, especially.
I will say, though, with Jed Fish, you bring Brian Bonner in. If he goes to UCLA, let's live in this world for a second, Roman. He goes to UCLA, he can immediately turn around that program, get those guys potentially committed to Washington, some of which SoCal guys, and bring them to UCLA. That the allure of bringing in Jedd Fisch would be someone who could turn around the UCLA recruiting. Not that it wasn't a bad place. I think Deshaun did an okay job at turning around from where was Chip Kelly's lack of recruiting. Deshaun, they had something good going. But he could go get Jedd Fisch, that is, all SoCal guys. And if Jed leaves, do you think Damon Williams go with him?
I have a feeling that would certainly be the case. They have just been tied at the hip throughout their college career. Obviously, he followed him from Arizona up to Washington. But Zach, let me ask you this. I look at like a lot of the recruiting and a lot of the stuff right now and selling the program. And Jed did a really good job turning that around with his, first head coaching job at Arizona. When was the last time, and I don't mean this as a jab, when is the last time UCLA had a 10-win season?
UCLA lasted a 10-win season with Jim Moore. They should have had one with Chip Kelly because they blew it, but they had one with Jim Mora in like the 2013, 2014 season, like that, around that time. So it's been a long time. It's been over a decade. There are multiple teams that should have had 10 wins with either Mora or Chip Kelly. I think they definitely blew those opportunities. But they've also 10 wins have been very hard to come by in UCLA's football history when there should have been more. But in the end, now that we're playing more games, 12-game regular seasons, it's been over a decade.
And that's kind of where I'm going with this. When I look at just what Washington has become over the last 10 years, after some very, very dark days in the early to mid 2000s, and, Ty Willingham, who I don't need to go down that road. Washington has had 5 10-win seasons in the last 10 years. And now that they're getting more buy-in from the president, more buy-in from the athletic director, where in terms of just what Pat Chun has been able to do from a fundraising standpoint, and just with the disarray that UCLA's athletic director and athletic department seems to be in some way, shape, or form right now, I feel like that this is just something that I'm not going to buy into.
Yeah, I mean, there is still, as much as there was the need to change Deshaun Foster, there are still, over the last home game and maybe over this home game, a plane flying with a banner, fire UCLA's AD Martin Jarmond. Like, that is still a very realistic thing. And that is also something that might not entice a head coach to leave his cushy spot where, how long do you think, if we're in a bizarre world, they fired Jedd Fisch in a on the field, just like they're playing bad? You think you have to at least 2 to 3 years, right, Roman? So like, why would you leave that if you have a UCLA AD who's getting lambasted by the media, by all the fans? People are paying money to fly a banner that says fire the AD. People just don't do that. Like, that's not something you see every day. For the coach, they did that for Chip Kelly. So that's also kind of a dicey situation where you have to deal with the public school system in terms of the UC system, but UCLA is willing to pay the money. They have the guys who are like, let's fund it. And there's enough fans, there's enough support. As much as there's been the joke about the little brother syndrome for UCLA, they are a legitimate traditional program on the West Coast football-wise. And I think they're finally starting to realize they can be good and be consistently good and get 10-win seasons. I think that's the case. We'll see if it's Jedd Fisch, though.
I think that's completely fair, but yeah, as of this moment, I'm not buying into this. And I think that UCLA could still go out and find a really good head coach. Like, I think a great option might be Will Stein, Oregon's offensive coordinator. I feel like that's the kind of guy where that'd be a nice step in the right direction. Hey, maybe Tim Skipper, Jerry Neuheisel, you want to keep those guys around because of the energy that they have flashed into this program over the last couple of weeks. And with that being said, let's talk a little bit about more some of those guys, because when we look at this move to the Big Ten from 2 former Pac-12 schools, there's a lot to unpack here. And we'll get there right after a message from our good friends over at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same attention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. We've also got a message from our good friends over at Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with a brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. I love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level each week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. Zach, UCLA caused this move to the Big Ten. This is all UCLA's fault. No, I'm kidding. But I look at this move, and we're however many games in. I keep doing this to myself, where I'm putting myself in position of doing math on the air, which not good, bad, don't like that. But I look at this move, and even if you want to just like talk about how it all came to fruition, I think that this was the most necessary outcome with how the Pac-12 just continued to be falling apart. And there are some things I hate about this: the travel, the non-direct flights to so many of the cities, the multiple hour flights that, we are subject to a lot more here on the West Coast compared to, Nebraska or Michigan or whoever you want to put out there. But overall, I don't know about you, but I'd say I'm happy with how this has gone.
I would say UCLA made the right move. In terms of the Big Ten, obviously the Bruins jumped in earlier, so they have a much better share than Washington or Oregon has. That UCLA was being proactive for all the things that they've done that were reactive. being proactive, they almost saw this coming. That's the one thing that Martin Jarmond, if you're going to give credit for after all the crazy dumb things that might be his fault or probably are his fault or whatever the athletic department looks that are dumb, being proactive and jumping in this with a national spotlight, I think is the right move. Now, if we're talking about for all of college football, for UCLA, should there be a Pac-12? Yes. There should be no need for there to be a super Big Ten conference with East Coast schools, with West Coast schools. It should not happen. But in terms of getting money and financial impact, yes. Will we see it change in 10 to 20 years? I think we should see it switch back to what it was. But we're all kind of greedy. And unfortunately, I think some schools are going to wait. Like Washington, Oregon, you're going to want to wait till the next deal comes out. And you're probably calling USC to say, hey, why are you crushing this $2 billion deal we're about to sign with the Big Ten right now? Quit it right now. Let's go. Let's go and make some more money and get that new influx of cash. So I think that being proactive, that's one of the few moves UCLA's done right. So I thought that was the correct move. I just don't think that it was the right move to move forward with a super big SEC, a super big Big Ten. Like them deciding the college football playoff, I think that's just dumb. Like, how do they get so much? Well, why do they get to be like four auto bids? Like, no, that's dumb. That's dumb for the sport. Don't let us control it. Like, that's so dumb. What is it, Tony Petitti? Like, come on. Like, all these ideas he throws out are like utterly stupid, like legitimately dumb. I don't get why we're letting these people just run the sport.
I'm going to say this in all fairness, just to have the other side of the coin there. Nothing that Tony Petitti has done is anything even close to some of the bad ideas we heard out of the mouth of Larry Scott. Like I don't think it's even in the same stratosphere. So that's
remember when there was the Pac-16. Remember there was rumored the Pac when we had
they could have had Texas and Oklahoma,
and we thought that was
we talk about this enough.
And now that was like they were like years ahead of everything. They were that would have been the genius move apparently with how things played out.
No, it's ridiculous.
Oh, man.
It pissed me off. No, I love where you're going with all that. Everything you said is absolutely fantastic. I looked at this from a very different, somewhat selfish standpoint because I don't think anything has frustrated me more about this than the ridiculous travel, where like that was a big story here at Washington last year when Jedd Fisch went 0-7 away from Husky Stadium last year, just to throw that out there for you. And one of those games was 3 miles down the road at Century Link Field. But another one of those games was a cross-country flight to Rutgers for a Friday night game. And then, just to return the favor, Rutgers just had to fly here for a Friday night game. At least they were coming off a bye for that one. But there are so many different little things like that I just think are absolutely ridiculous about this. And as this moves forward, I understand why it was the right move. I'm not complaining about that in any way, shape, or form. The thing that I think I would say, though, that I'm happiest about with this is the recruiting. And, again, just to tie this in with our conversation from earlier, this is something where, you and I both grew up in Los Angeles. We see these guys, oh, yeah, I'm going to USC. I'm going to USC. I'm going to Washington, whatever. Like those have been premier West Coast brands for a very long time. And then all of a sudden around, 2014, 2015, I want to say is like when it really started happening. There was this change when Ohio State started dipping into Southern California, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, all those schools started coming west and just saying, hey, look at these big brands that we have. And this is also, again, post Larry Scott, and this is all his fault. I'm going to blame him for this. They all said, hey, look at these big brands that we're able to give you and give you all this national exposure to, move on to the NFL. And like all these schools were already powerhouses and already blue blood programs. And then all of a sudden it was, hey, we're going to take all the best talent in California. We're going to take all the best talent on the West Coast too. So the fact that these 4 schools were able to make this move is something that I'm really happy with in that department, because all of a sudden it allows you to say, no, you don't need to go there to get all that exposure and play, in front of the biggest audiences in college football every week. You're going to have that same opportunity right here in your own backyard, where it's going to be a lot easier for your entire family to come watch you as well. I think that's something that may have gone a little bit overlooked in all of this, but I think is very, very important.
It is important. I feel sorry for Washington State and Oregon State that, UCLA is probably the reason those schools are going to be forgotten about in quite a few sports, other than like a couple. Oregon State's always going to be relevant in baseball. But, I missed, the random trips to I missed those, like, all right, let's go to Corvallis. Oh, we're going to Pullman. Even when UCLA is bad, one of their biggest wins was the 32-point comeback at Washington State with Chip Kelly and Dorian Thompson.
I thought you were going to say the other 32-point comeback led by Jedd Fisch.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. But we're talking about the one in 2019 where it's like, that's nuts. Like
I do remember that one very well. We here in Seattle love that. So
like that was the old. I just love those little trips in the Arizonas and the Arizona States. Like those are rivalries we shouldn't lose. And I guess we're still playing each other. They're just non-conference games now. All the travel used to be in basketball, if we're talking basketball, in November to December. Now it's January to March, and that's going to cause some effects and carryover effects to March. And I don't think we want to see that for those programs. Or when we're playing baseball and we have to go to Maryland and it's cold.
Ridiculous.
Like, no, they should all come here. We should be owning the West Coast. It's just, it's nuts, but it was the right move. I just wonder if and when it will and should go back to the way it was, or the ideas of, hey, football has its own conferences. Think of high schools. Not every high school is in Southern California, and every sport is in the same league. You're not playing the same opponents. Different sports have different travel schedules. Football, you can go play Rutgers because you only go once. If you do it off a bye, you can make it happen. For basketball, it's a little tougher because you got to be gone a few more days. Now everybody's going to go fly out 100,000 people for a basketball game. It's just not real. Rutgers might pack it out, but they're not going to pack it out in Seattle for Rutgers coming to town for basketball. That's not happening. We just need to split it up and make it make sense, Roman. Make it make sense.
I wish I could because as we record this today on Tuesday, I just got back from doing media with Washington's head basketball coach, Danny Sprinkle. And he was talking about the trip to Purdue and Ohio State they have to take this year. And then the trip to Maryland and Rutgers that they have to make not too long after that. And I was like, God, that sucks. Like, that's going to be just absolutely horrible. Like, there's so many of those little things that play into it that I agree with you, Zach, that as this continues to move on and just, we go further down this road, maybe they want to do something great, like bring back the divisions in the Big Ten. So it's, we know that USC, Oregon, and UCLA are going to be on the schedule every single year. And yeah, you're going to have, one or two trips that are going to suck, but it's better than 4 or 5. Like there are so many other ways to make this work. And I want to give you all the answers. That'd be great. But unfortunately, I don't have this have any of them at this time. But with that being said, let's switch gears here a little bit because we talked a lot about the big picture. Let's talk about our two respective teams. Right after a message from our good friends over at Wayfair. The holidays are going to be here before you know it, which is exciting, but getting your home ready for guests and celebrations can feel like a lot. Maybe your serveware needs a refresh or the guest room could use new bedding. Wayfair has everything you need to get your home holiday ready, from Christmas trees and wreaths to bedding, cookware, and outdoor inflatables. It's your one-stop shop for every room in the house. Wayfair makes it easy to personalize your home for the holidays with a huge selection for every style and budget. And with free and easy delivery, even on the big stuff, you can get everything you need without the hassle of huge deliveries. I love how easy it was to find pieces to fit my style and budget. Everything was in one place, and checkout was a breeze. Now, instead of stressing about getting the house ready, you can actually enjoy the holiday with friends and family. Get organized, refreshed, and ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. We've also got a message from our good friends over at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts for a project fast? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Zach, our two teams have gotten off to very, very different starts. Is that the way to put it? Like, I feel like it's probably the most appropriate, but
one was a little more entertaining. I mean, in some respects, but
that's
I'd like
fair.
to be,
that's one way to put it.
4-2, 5-1. I'd certainly like that.
Oh no, I love it. And they were posting something like 55 points a game in the non-conference schedule. Or I know it was a pretty easy non-conference schedule. I don't care. I like points. I think that's a lot of fun, but
Indiana doesn't care about non-conference schedule. That's for sure.
That's very true. And, that spawned a moment on the Big Ten squad that I personally will never forget. So thank you for a big part of that too. For all our everydayers who don't know what you're talking about, you missed out in a big way. But I look at the road that each of our teams is going to take to get to this game I almost said Westwood. I know it's in Pasadena. I've been there several times at the end of November, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Originally, I had this game chalked up as a win for Washington. I don't do game week predictions because I'm just the world's biggest jinx. Washington would go 0-12 every single year if I picked the game on the day before, I should say. But I look at this matchup and there's just been new life injected into UCLA, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I will say every UCLA game last 5-6 games I've picked incorrectly. So I think it's okay for me to be wrong about New Mexico and UNLV, considering that was just unheard of. Northwestern, now that's a little crazy. Utah, a little crazy by me, but Penn State and, now with Michigan State, pretty crazy. With UCLA, it's fascinating because I think even we're pretty fresh off recording our Big Ten squad. We're both on it this week. And the idea that UCLA can control their own destiny and still potentially get to the Big Ten championship game and have an outside shot at the playoff, like that's nuts. And the funny thing is, if UCLA wins all those games, they could be considered as an at-large. They would have to win at Indiana and at Ohio State. I'm not sure if teams are ready to put in a 4-loss team. I don't know. That's a whole optimistic rabbit hole I'm ready to jump down. I'm not sure people are ready to see me talk about that live. But, the fact that they've made this interesting, they've dominated Penn State, got their coach fired, dominated Michigan State, pretty much taking Jonathan Smith out of the running for UCLA opening. And then Jerry Neuheisel, he needs a shampoo NIL deal, right? I'm not sure if they give those to coaches, but he needs to.
They will. They'll find one.
And then Chip Skipper, he needs like the smile, right? He needs one, all right, he's got a smile NIL deal because he's just Mr. Positivity. And then Jerry Neuheisel for the shampoo. Somehow they put it together that UCLA is not just a decent team, they are competitive and dominating. Like they were so bad it was weird, and now they're dominating so much and it's weird. Like I don't know where the access is. If they beat Washington, I wouldn't be surprised, and if Washington comes here, I wouldn't be surprised. What are your thoughts, Roman? Is this one of the more stunning 2 to 3 week turnarounds at the moment that you've seen from a program? Like what's going on?
So I'm glad you asked, because I actually wanted to throw this right back at you with a question. And I don't mean this to, just kind of tamp down everything we talked about in the first 11, 12 minutes of the show. Why would UCLA not just keep these guys on? Like it's not even, something I want to get into with money and different things like that. It's the amount of energy that we have seen from this program in the last couple of weeks, let alone the actual offensive turnaround, the actual product on the field, which is so much better. Why would you not want to keep this coaching staff around and just say, yeah, here are more resources, go build what we want, because you are already doing that. You are already getting the buy-in that we're looking for.
They would have to go beat Indiana on the road in a couple weeks' time. Like that would be a legitimate win. UCLA's actually favored at home versus Maryland, which is shocking considering what just happened a couple weeks ago. And they're favored. UCLA's favored. Yeah. And I think UCLA might beat them. We'll find out if the fans show out. So you have to get the support in terms of fan support. If the fans show out the Rose Bowl and it's exciting in Pasadena and they start to need to take the tarps off, then yes, that'll be huge. But you have to go beat a big program. If they can't go to Indiana and win or, be competitive in that game, that's like, okay, it was a fun ride. But UCLA wants to be Indiana. They're like, you get the right coach, you can turn around and be in Indiana. That's the curse, right? The blessing and the curse. Sure. We love Indiana's story, but now everybody thinks they can be Indiana. And I think UCLA could have been one of them this year. Well, I was wrong. Deshaun made a complete fool of himself leading this program into the ground, and the Bruins got rid of him. And now Tim Skipper, on a whim, has come out and brought this program out of nowhere just by simply elevating Jerry Neuheisel when Tino was the hot hire. Yeah. And I thought he was the hot hire. So none of it makes sense. And UCLA, we're not on stable ground yet. The foundation's not there. This is entertainment, but we're not foundationally set yet. If they go beat Indiana or Ohio State on the road, mind you, then they're legitimate. And I think you almost have to hire them on the spot. But the problem is you need someone who can be a program builder, not an in-season builder, but a program builder. And that's not a slide at Tim Skipper. It's a weird gamble. It's like the worst case scenario. UCLA was on the path to get the UC Regents to pay more money. So you almost would have rather them, all right, we can go get whatever coach we want. We know what we're looking for. Now you have this new wrinkle of we have to keep Jerry Neuheisel, a lifelong Bruin. We have to keep Tim Skipper because the players are rallying around him and they're actually winning. So It's kind of a blessing and a curse at the moment.
So I look at this from two different perspectives because I know I need to talk a little bit about UW here, or I know all my everydayers will revolt. But the two things I want to say is I legitimately don't think you have to win either of those games for that to happen. And the biggest reason I say that is even if you look competitive in one of those games, I think that's a sign that it's a big step in the right direction. And there is a lot of buy-in because especially after watching Ohio State in person a few weeks ago, that team is quite impressive. Like huge shout out to how just truly how elite that defense is.
So if UCLA beats Ohio State on the road, you would personally put down I'm not sure I'm going to say millions, but you put down $10 toward the UCLA Hire Tim Skipper Right Now fund.
I would send them $20. Yes, no, definitely. No, but so like switching gears here because you bring up a lot of good points and a lot of those things that you're talking about as it pertains to, what is important, program building, and all of those things. Those are all things that Jedd Fisch is getting in place here at Washington. And I don't know if that's something he'd want to move on from so quickly, but B, I've just been so impressed with how quickly it's come to fruition and how well it's been done from a combination of transfer portal guys, from guys that were already on the roster in a couple of different cases, from guys that he's recruited out of high school, whether it be, guys like Damon Williams and Adam Muhammad, who, were both in his 2024 recruiting class at Arizona that he brought with him. Some 2025 guys like John Mills, Desmond Roebuck, Dylan Robinson. There are so many different just names that I could rattle off here and spend 15 minutes talking about each and every single one of them and how important they've become as part of this Washington team. But I look at not just this game, this upcoming week against Michigan, but down the road and what Washington could look like by the time they get down to this UCLA game. I just think that this is one of the better young teams in college football that just still aren't getting talked about. And when I look at this matchup against UCLA, Washington has won. I was talking to somebody earlier who mentioned it's like one time since 1995. And I don't need to go down the road of, I remember being at the game in 2013, 2012, I want to say it was, when Miles Jack scored 4 touchdowns and just PTSD from that whole experience. But I'm so impressed with what Jedd Fisch is doing. And there is just an exciting energy around that he's brought to Washington when, if you told anybody right now or on Tuesday, October 4th, or the day after Kalen DeBoer left is the best way to say this, that on Tuesday, October 14th, 2025, you'd be sitting at 5-1 with one of the best young quarterbacks in the country, who just, by the way, became the 16th quarterback in FBS history to go for over 400 passing yards and 100 rushing yards in a game. And you're going to Michigan with an opportunity to get ranked and really make a name for yourself. I would have said you're crazy after how everything went in those days following the DeBoer departure. But with everything Jedd Fisch has brought to this program, by the time it gets down to UCLA, I'm so excited about what just the possibilities are.
Got a couple questions for you, Roman. One that's funny and one that's legitimate. We'll go with the legitimate one first. Do you think that Kalen DeBoer just dominating so quickly in those couple of years at Washington is hurting Jedd Fisch's ability to build the program up? Because we've seen Curt Cignetti do it in 2 years. You saw what Kalen DeBoer did, blink of an eye, breaking in Michael Penix Jr., which will lead me to the next question in a moment, though. Like, does that hurt his ability? Because you still have to build a program. We forget you have to build a program. As much as the portal is important, you still need 2 to 3 years, theoretically, to make it happen and be a consistent program. That's why Kalen DeBoer at Alabama is inconsistent, because he doesn't have Nick Saban's consistency.
So yes and no. I think that's a really great question, because on the yes side, what Kalen DeBoer did, going 25-3 and just especially being in every game the way that they were, it certainly takes a lot of wind out of your sails in 2024 as you're also breaking into a new conference, which is just a very different style of play, by the way. And UW was just not at all equipped for it, with losing, 15 or 10 players got drafted. 15 or 17 was the number that wound up in total in the NFL after UDFA signings and everything like that. So there's part of that that's yes, but also part of it is no. And it's one of the things that I think Alabama fans are very frustrated right now with when it comes to Kalen DeBoer is Kalen DeBoer walked into a much better situation than some people realize, where Chris Peterson left Jimmy Lake, who just tried to burn everything to the ground, with some of the best talents in UW history, where you go and you look at that 2023 team that made a run to the national championship. 90% of the guys who contributed in a major way on that team were recruited by or at one point played for Chris Peterson in 2019 at the very least. So I think that is a big part of it. And is, some of that is a little bit unfair, where I think that Kalen was a tremendous coach during his time here. And I'm not ever going to, talk down on what
Can't
he
slander
did
on DeBoer.
Yeah. But at the same point though, there are some things that I think Jedd Fisch was set up that he really had to overcome in a big way, which is one of the reasons I've been so impressed with him, which is how quickly he's done it.
And here's the funny question. Maybe I might sound dumb asking this question. I'm not as tuned in to the UW side of things, but if Shedeur had his number retired at Colorado, I think you know where I'm going with this.
I do.
Should you retire Michael Penix Jr.'s number at Washington?
I actually wrote about this. This is a tremendous question because I can talk about this for 45 minutes. I wrote about this for Huskies Wire last year, when not just when the Shedeur thing happened, when Caleb Williams got his number retired at USC. Because Zach, this is a fun fact for you. Three of UW's, who I would consider not necessarily Mount Rushmore guys, but the best player in school history at each position, wore number 9. It's not just Michael Penix. It's Myles Gaskin, who is, the all-time leading rusher and leading touchdown scorer in UW history, also wore number 9. Lawyer Malloy, who had a tremendous NFL career as well, also wore number 9. So I think it's long overdue for UW to do so, but that's, I digress there.
I'm thinking September 9th, UW schedules a game, maybe 2029, maybe not, but September 9th, they schedule a game. Doesn't matter what day of the week. Bring all those guys in, retire number 9, and then everybody has in unison a purple number 9 jersey, and you have a purple out and you rock and roll. Am I right? Am I wrong?
No, you are 100% right. I need this to happen now. And, whoever's in the UW AD that might be listening to this, let's make it happen. Zach, this has been absolutely tremendous. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all our everydayers out there for tuning in on our respective channels and wherever you get this podcast for more awesome crossover content like this. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure you click that like button, click the little bells. You know us when we post a new show. Plus, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Thursday.